So it is great to have you here. Welcome to the MidAtlantic Logger Training monthly webinar series. This month's topic is weathering the storm. Recent years have been hard for timber harvesters with weather extremes, low prices, mill closures and quotas, and debt. Learning to manage your stress and maintain good mental health can help you stay safe and productive on the job and enjoy time with family and friends. So that's our topic for tonight. Before we get into that, we do have a few housekeeping items. So yes, we'd like to thank you for registering. As I said, I'm Karen Snape. I am with the Virginia Sharp Logger Program. The MALT program is a collaboration of Virginia Sharp Logger, Maryland, Delaware, Ohio, and West Virginia. I want to make sure you know that the session is being recorded. Those will be made available for credit. So if you have a friend, colleague, family member that you think would have benefited from watching this tonight and wasn't able to be here, those will be available recorded. And we are working on how to structure the recordings and make them available to you. But that's almost done. Our colleague Ben, who is here tonight, has been working on that. Right now, all of your cameras and microphones are off. So nobody can see you or hear you, and you cannot change those settings by yourself. So in order to communicate with us and with our guest speaker, you have a few options. Those are the Q&A icon, which looks like two cartoon talking bubbles. You can click that to type in a question for our presenter. We have the chat icon, which looks like one cartoon talking bubble, which you can use to make comments or ask questions. And then we also have the raise hand icon. If you click that, it will alert us that you would like to have your microphone turned on, and we can give you a chance to speak. If you can't see these icons, you may need to move your mouse around a little bit on your screen, and then they'll probably show up along the bottom, occasionally up at the top. And if you're on a smartphone or a tablet, you may have to tap your screen to see those icons. But that is how you can communicate with us. Each webinar in this series is worth 1 continuing education credit, and we are doing 8 of them. So that's up to 8 continuing education credits in whichever program you belong to, whether that's Ohio Master Logger, West Virginia Certified Logger, Virginia Sharp Logger, or Maryland, Delaware Master Logger. Certificates of completion will be emailed to the email that you used to register for this webinar. Then the participation list will also be forwarded to each state's coordinator to be assigned to your records. So you don't need to send that certificate to the credit coordinator, but you should keep it in case there's any kind of an error or an omission. You can provide it if you need to, or if you feel like you may have made a mistake when you registered in letting us know which program you needed the credit submitted to. So the plan is that I will only get people who said that they were a Virginia Sharp Logger. If you're sitting there thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm West Virginia Certified and Sharp, and I only put down my West Virginia number, that's when the certificate that you're getting might come in handy. It might take a few weeks for your credits to update in the various systems. We're working 4 different systems, and each one's a little bit different. But here's our schedule for the rest of the series, and you can attend any or all of these. On August 24th, we will be talking about OSHA and how they handle one of the deadliest industries in the Mid-Atlantic. Guess what? That's yours. That's logging. In September, we're going to talk about deer and forest management. October 26th, we'll be talking about logging insurance and risk management. And November 30th, we'll be talking about log trucks, log hauling accidents, and other casualty claims, and how to protect yourself from those claims. So that's always the last Tuesday of the month. So we hope to see you back next month. As I said, we're going to be talking about OSHA and the logging industry and safety. So I don't know, I don't see any questions. If you have any questions about the housekeeping type things before we get to our speaker, go ahead and put those in the chat or the Q&A. Again, the chat looks like the single talk bubble. The Q&A looks like the double talk bubble. So if you got any questions about any of these housekeeping items, go ahead. You can put those in at any time, even while our speaker is talking, and Agnes, Brad, Ben, or I will respond to you. And then, of course, that is also where you can put in questions for tonight's speaker. So we'll go ahead and introduce tonight's speaker. Tonight's speaker is Jeremy Dalbert. Jeremy was raised on a dairy farm in Pennsylvania. Jeremy then attended Virginia Tech and obtained a BS degree in dairy science and a Master of Natural Resources. Upon graduation, Jeremy was a herdsman for several large dairy farms. Jeremy and his wife, Becky, then owned and operated STOX Dairy Farm in Pennsylvania and New York. Then Jeremy managed a 250 cow, 4-robot milking facility and methane digester. In 2013, Jeremy moved to Dayton, Virginia with his family and began working for Virginia Cooperative Extension as a dairy science extension agent. In his position as an extension agent, Jeremy provides educational support to dairy producers in Virginia. Jeremy also works with the Virginia Agribility Program, assisting disabled farmers and veterans. So I'm going to stop my screen share so that Jeremy can pull his up, and we look forward to hearing from Jeremy. All right, so Jeremy, you can go ahead and do your screen share now. Okay, that looks good. And get started whenever you're ready.
All right, am I unmuted now? I think so.
Yes, that reminds me to mute myself.
All right, thanks, Karen, for that introduction. It sounds like I'm busy, which is how I feel most days. So at least it sounds that way too. So thanks everybody for joining us, joining me here today. I know this is a little bit different than some of your other webinars that you've been on, but it's an important subject and one that I've been working on for the last few years. So how did this happen? How did I get to talking about stress, farm stress? Really, it doesn't have to be farm stress, it can be anything. So several years ago, of course, I work with dairy farmers, and it's pretty well known. There's been a lot of stress in the dairy industry, as you know, really similar to the logging industry. So there's a lot of anxiety, mental health, suicides, abuse, and then this little thing called a pandemic happened, which just basically took everything to another level. So if you had a little bit of anxiety before, you probably have a lot of anxiety now. For some people, the pandemic actually helped their business. For some, it made it a lot more difficult, but there was so many unknowns when it came. So one of the things that I got trained in, and I would encourage anybody that works with people in general to get this training, is mental health first aid. So I had never heard of it. And I was like, all right, well, I have to do this to do farm stress training. So I'm going to go do it. It's pretty enlightening. It's very out of my wheelhouse, very different from what I'm used to. I was a farmer, and this is quite different. So, but basically, in its basic form, it's just like first aid, except for mental health. So if you're trained to do CPR, it doesn't make you a doctor. If you're trained in mental health first aid, it doesn't make you a counselor. So it's just the basics of helping somebody in need and getting them to somebody that can really help them more. So I'm not teaching mental health first aid tonight, but I just want to throw this out there. These classes are available, they're around, and I would recommend anybody look into it. If you work with any number of people, if you're a business owner, or if you work with business owners, it's just a really good training and sort of enlightening for most of us that are out in the field and doing work. So tonight's called Weathering the Storm, How to Cultivate a Productive Mindset. So we're just going to talk a little bit about how stress affects you and what you can do about it. Life can be extremely stressful, no matter what vocation you're in, whether it's dairy farming, whether it's logging, whether it's trucking, whether it's industry, whether it's in education. The stresses are different, but everybody is under some type of stress. So hopefully this workshop will help you develop some mindset tactics to weather that storm. So just a quick brief agenda. We're going to go through just understanding what stress is, talk a little bit about communication, and then finally some suicide awareness at the end. So the situation, life is stressful. So I got this little thing here, life-work balance, family, career. So everybody's out there trying to balance a lot of different things. So agriculture and forestry rank among the most hazardous industries, as you just heard Karen talk about next month's webinar with OSHA. And many of you are well aware. So people in these industries are at high risk for fatal and non-fatal injuries. This high rate of injury leads to stress. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the industry sector that represents agriculture and forestry was ranked third in the number and rate of fatal work injuries. Farmers, ranchers, and agricultural managers had a fatal work rate of 24 out of 100,000 full-time equivalent. That compares to just 3.5 out of the 100,000 for all other civilian occupations. So every day, approximately 100 agricultural and forestry workers suffer an injury leading to lost work time. In addition to the lost work time, it creates additional financial pressure, as well as issues involving property, weather, animals, and crops. It's important that we all learn how to manage our stress levels and to reduce the effects of unwanted stress. Too much stress can make you more accident prone and can affect your health. You can start by learning to identify common stressors, recognize the symptoms of stress, and manage stress. By doing these three things, you'll be able to make your workplace safer and live a more fulfilling life. So these next two slides here aren't specific to forestry, and I probably should have found some more specific to forestry, but really it just shows that you're not alone, and that's the big thing I wanted to show with these. There's corn farmers, soybean farmers, wheat farmers, dairy farmers, people in the forestry industry, people in the trucking industry. Everybody has a lot of stresses. They're not exactly the same, but everybody suffers from the same basic things that cause stress, weather, diseases, markets. Most of these industries share the same struggles. So what is stress? How is stress defined? Stress is defined as a need or demand that people confront that is perceived as burdensome or threatening and can lead to physical or mental health problems. Not all stress is bad. I'm sure many of you have heard of the fight or flight syndrome. So this stress causes that. So sometimes it makes you run faster to get away from something that's dangerous, or get things done, before a storm is coming through. When we're excited about something like a wedding, a birth of a baby, holidays, we feel anticipation. This helps us get mentally and physically ready for the event. This type of stress is called eustress. It energizes us. It's what keeps us going during seeding, harvesting, and any time you're trying to get stuff done in a hurry. However, when we suffer from too much stress, and particularly if it's over a long period of time, this is called distress. Prolonged distress can result in severe physical problems, emotional problems, or both. In many rural areas, a high percentage of visits to family physicians are due to stress-related illnesses. So just think for a second some things that you might think of, some signs of stress. So stress can affect your body, it can affect your mind, and it can affect how you do things. So think about how you feel when you are stressed. So there's a link here, and I can send these links out afterwards with some handouts. if you're interested, or you can always reach out to me or anybody in extension for some of these resources. So your body, so headaches, stomach aches, back aches, high blood pressure, high blood sugar, racing heart, nausea. These are all signs in the body. These are all physical signs of stress. And once you can recognize the stress signals, then you can begin to develop some skills for handling stress. You may also find it easier to recognize stress in others. So some things in the mind: anxiousness, anger, sadness, bitterness, depressed, hopelessness. Hopelessness is probably the deepest part of depression, and really where we want people to not get to that point. But most of us probably feel anxious about many things. I get anxious every time I give a presentation. I get some type of anxiousness. And again, it's not always bad. Sometimes this thing, like we talked in the previous slide, sort of helps us get things done. So the third part is actions. So a lot of times these are things to the extreme. You can't sleep, or you sleep too much. You can't eat, or you eat too much. So sometimes it can be different points in people's lives changes. Maybe you eat too much right now, and that's your way of coping with stress. And maybe at some point in the future or in the past, you didn't eat at all, and that was your way of coping with stress. Increased use of cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol. Just getting angry and breaking and throwing things, yelling and screaming, or just withdrawing altogether. These are all coping mechanisms, but they're not healthy coping mechanisms. So now we'll talk a little bit about just understanding some of the root causes in stress. And some of these are going to be different for every one of you, and everyone that you work with, and different people in your family. Everybody gets stressed out by different things. So what do you think are some common stressors for loggers and their families? So weather. I think everybody is affected by the weather. Right now in the area I'm in, we're in a pretty severe drought. And there's just a lot of anxiousness and just unknown about the crops. This could be a short-term or a long-term thing. Again, right now we're in a drought, but we know we're not going to be in a drought forever. Eventually it's going to rain. It could be a short term, like there's a hurricane or a tornado coming. It's something that's very devastating, but it comes, it goes, and then you have to deal with the after effects. But it's a very short term, versus droughts, floods, things that are sort of, they come a little bit slower, but they're here a little bit longer. So large debt loads. If you're in the logging industry and you have equipment, you'll probably have some debt on that equipment. If you own a business, if you own a sawmill, if you own trucks, there's just a lot of costs, and those costs seem to be increasing every year. And this causes a lot of stress for many people and many businesses. Government regulations. This is something that's different from state to state and region to region and industry to industry. But for some people, this is something that causes a lot of stress. Machinery breakdowns. So you have these large debt loads on this machinery, and now you have a breakdown. So you have another expense to fix it. And this could go either way too, as a short-term or a long-term thing. You could have older equipment and maybe you have less debt, but you're always doing repairs and always fixing it and always having this just these little bit of costs all the time. Or it could be something where a piece of machinery catches on fire and it's completely gone and you have to replace it. So it's a more significant event, but it's a shorter amount of time versus something that's just breaking down. Every week is little breakdowns. So high interest rates, most of us haven't seen these in quite a few years. We've been blessed with low interest rates lately, but some of you may be old enough where you remember, the 80s, where interest rates were in the teens, the upper teens. And, probably sometime in my lifetime, there's a good chance we'll see that again. So this is a little bit more pertains to agriculture, but crop yields and livestock illnesses, but this is the same in forestry. It's the same, but it's different. But you're looking at threats to the forests. A lot of invasive species. A lot of these invasive species are coming in and getting in forests, and killing trees, making the wood not a viable resource or a lower value. Animals coming in and destroying some of the land, or some of the newer forests. So there's a lot of different things. So again, even though a lot of what I talk about is for farming, for dairy farming or crop farming, it really translates the same for loggers, foresters, and truckers as well. Commodity prices. I think everybody that's either buying or selling understands that there's a lot of price risk. If you're buying, price could go way up. If you're selling, the price could go way down. And there's not a lot you can do about that. So that causes a lot of stress for many people. And then, sometimes this might be the most stressful for some businesses, disagreements with family members. Many businesses, many forestry businesses, trucking businesses are family businesses, and not all the time do family members get along. So this can be very, very stressful in a lot of different ways. Maybe you just don't get along with your business partner who may be a spouse, could be an employee who's going through a divorce and it's affecting how they're working for you. It could be that a family member passes away, and maybe there's some disagreements on what to do with that part of the business that family member ran. So this can go a lot of different directions, but many times this may be the most stressful of all the things. So I'm going to attempt to show this little video here. It's about 4 minutes long, and it just shows how stress affects your body.
Cramming for a test? Trying to get more done than you have time to do? Stress is a feeling we all experience when we are challenged or overwhelmed. But more than just an emotion, stress is a hardwired physical response that travels throughout your entire body. In the short term, stress can be advantageous, but when activated too often or too long, your primitive fight or flight stress response not only changes your brain, but also damages many of the other organs and cells throughout your body. Your adrenal gland releases the stress hormones cortisol, epinephrine, also known as adrenaline, and norepinephrine. As these hormones travel through your bloodstream, they easily reach your blood vessels and heart. Adrenaline causes your heart to beat faster and raises your blood pressure, over time causing hypertension. Cortisol can also cause the endothelium, or inner lining of blood vessels, to not function normally. Scientists now know that this is an early step in triggering the process of atherosclerosis, or cholesterol plaque buildup in your arteries. Together, these changes increase your chances of a heart attack or stroke. When your brain senses stress, it activates your autonomic nervous system. Through this network of nerve connections, your big brain communicates stress to your enteric or intestinal nervous system. Besides causing butterflies in your stomach, this brain-gut connection can disturb the natural rhythmic contractions that move food through your gut, leading to irritable bowel syndrome, and can increase your gut's sensitivity to acid, making you more likely to feel heartburn. Via the gut's nervous system, stress can also change the composition and function of your gut bacteria, which may affect your digestive and overall health. Speaking of digestion, Does chronic stress affect your waistline? Well, yes. Cortisol can increase your appetite. It tells your body to replenish your energy stores with energy-dense foods and carbs, causing you to crave comfort foods. High levels of cortisol can also cause you to put on those extra calories as visceral or deep belly fat. This type of fat doesn't just make it harder to button your pants. It is an organ that actively releases hormones and immune system chemicals called cytokines that can increase your risk of developing chronic diseases such as heart disease and insulin resistance. Meanwhile, stress hormones affect immune cells in a variety of ways. Initially, they help prepare to fight invaders and heal after injury. But chronic stress can dampen the function of some immune cells, make you more susceptible to infections, and slow the rate you heal. Want to live a long life? You may have to curb your chronic stress. That's because it has even been associated with shortened telomeres, the shoelace tip ends of chromosomes that measure a cell's age. Telomeres cap chromosomes to allow DNA to get copied every time a cell divides without damaging the cell's genetic code. And they shorten with each cell division. When telomeres become too short, a cell can no longer divide, and it dies. As if all that weren't enough, chronic stress has even more ways it can sabotage your health, including acne, hair loss, sexual dysfunction, headaches, muscle tension, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, and irritability. So, what does all this mean for you? Your life will always be filled with stressful situations, but what matters to your brain and entire body is how you respond to that stress. If you can view those situations as challenges you can control and master, rather than as threats that are insurmountable, you will perform better in the short run and stay healthy in the long run.
All right, so this video showed us how stress can create physical and health issues. So it's a little, some interesting characters in there. Probably something I could draw because I'm not a very good artist. But it kind of gets the point across. And we talked a little bit about cortisol earlier, and being the fight or flight hormone. So this video here talked even more about cortisol. So cortisol is known as the stress hormone and is released in times of fear or stress. Cortisol increases glucose in the bloodstream. It can motivate us to act. However, when cortisol levels remain elevated, perhaps due to chronic stress, this can have detrimental impacts on our health. Cortisol alters our immune system, suppresses digestive and reproductive systems, and suppresses growth processes. Cortisol changes our mood, fears, and motivation. Health problems associated with higher cortisol levels include heart disease, lowered immune system response, digestive problems, sleep problems, issues with memory and concentration, weight gain, anxiety, depression, and lower life expectancy. So this here, you see these two jars here. On the left, you see a jar with water. On the right, you see a jar with, it's actually got dirt in it. But it sort of signifies how cortisol does. The jar on the left is clear. When you don't have cortisol in your bloodstream, you can think clearly, you can see clearly. Everything's just a little more clear. When you have a lot of cortisol in your bloodstream, like on the right, it just makes you think cloudy. Your judgment is clouded sometimes. And again, this is the fight or flight hormone. So if you ever heard somebody that jumped into a dangerous situation to save somebody's life, and they're like, well, I didn't really think about it, I just did it. This is the hormone that made them do that. And again, that's a good thing, that they could save somebody's life, even though they put their own life in danger. So because you're just not thinking clearly. But having this in your bloodstream chronically can make you do a lot of things that just aren't very healthy. We talked about some of the destructive things earlier on that people can do themselves when they're under this chronic stress. So now we've talked a lot about stress and cortisol and how it affects your body. one of the other things when I saw that video that I first thought of is I thought how many people that I knew that were relatively young, maybe 50 years old or in their low 50s, and they had heart attacks and seemed to be in really good health. And then I thought, well, those are people that, you know, they're always under chronic stress. And even though they appeared to be healthy, it was really doing a lot of damage to their body that you couldn't see from the outside. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some effective coping strategies. So, and these are just like tools. Everybody's got a toolbox to work on their equipment. These are tools for you to work on yourself. Tools are designed to do very different jobs. Find the right coping strategy or tool to fit the situation. And remember to change strategies if the one you're using isn't working. And what tool you will use will be different for everyone. So find what works for you. So this next couple slides here are just lots of lists of different tools that that may work for you. And some of these will work for some people and some of them will not work for other people. And I was doing a workshop, one of these workshops for farmers a couple years ago, and we were sitting there and one of the ladies in the back stood up and she's like, you know, about a year ago, I set my watch to noon every day and I walk for a mile or two every day. She just decides to do it, but she had to set a watch with an alarm on it and decide that she was going to do that every day at this certain time. She said she started doing this, and after about a month, her daughter came up to her and said, "Mom, you're in a lot better mood than you used to be." So it was just one of those things where she was intentional about what she was doing to relieve her stress, and her family, her children, noticed what she was doing, you know, just to relieve this stress. So these are some things. There's a lot of things on this list here. A lot of people do meditation, prayer. If you're a religious person, a lot of people will pray, reflect, just think positively, exercise. There's a lot of data and studies that show exercise, even for as little as 20 minutes a day, can help relieve stress and clear that cortisol out of your bloodstream. Try to get good rest, listen to music, do something that you like, read a book. Again, there's a lot of things on here and they're different for everybody. What works for one person might not work for the next person. So find what works for you. Try to use something that's healthy versus something that's destructive. Some people use alcohol and cigarettes and drugs as coping mechanisms. And while they are coping mechanisms, they're not healthy coping mechanisms. So here's just some more things. Sometimes just having a clean and organized space. If you sit at a desk for some of the day or all the day, depending on your job, or you're driving a truck, you know, is your truck clean? You know, sometimes just the stress of sitting in the truck driving all day and looking over and having trash in your truck, even though it might not seem that way, maybe that's causing a lot of stress on you. It probably doesn't take a lot of time, especially if you do it, you know, 10 minutes every day, just to keep it clean, and that may be what's triggering the stress in you. Take time to call a friend or family member up. Spend 15 minutes a day reviewing tasks, setting priorities, select 3 healthy habits that you will commit to each day. So again, it's just a lot of things on this list, and some of them will work for you and some of them won't. So find what works for you. So think about the coping strategy tools that are available in your toolbox. Often we don't have the tool that would be most useful in our current toolbox, so we may need help getting it from someone else. We may need to learn how to use a new tool that works better in solving a problem than other tools. If one way a person handles stress is to overeat or self-medicate with alcohol or cigarettes, these are tools or strategies, but they are poor options that could be replaced by a more effective option, such as daily exercise. To find and use effective coping strategies, several things can be helpful. Think about the ways you seek to manage stresses. What are you doing? Does the approach you have, does it have a helpful effect or a harmful effect? Think about matching the strategy you will use to a particular need. Perhaps you're used to handling all equipment concerns, but you have another person available who is competent in that area, and this task could be delegated. So the strategy of delegate some tasks to another person to lighten the load could be matched with the need of handling equipment concerns. Brainstorm and explore the variety of coping strategies available. Focus on using strategies that are most effective and that work for you and your circumstances. And again, these may change over time. What works today might not work in 6 months, and what doesn't work today might work in 6 months from now or a year from now. Learning new strategies or coping or adopting different ways of managing stress that you have not used before may be necessary. Practices such as mindfulness can help in managing stress. Changing the way you work and schedule time can also be examples of doing something differently. Be open to new coping practices is very helpful. So these are all things that you can do on your own. You can do with employees, you can do with a spouse or children or other family members or just a friend. So it's really up to you to choose how you want to use these coping strategies and these tools and what tools you want in your toolbox. So we'll talk now a little bit about 3 strategies for managing stress. These are all things that you can do on your own or with somebody. They're little or no cost strategies, and they don't take a lot of time. So there's something that everybody can do. So strategy 1 is self-talk. So be careful how you're talking to yourself because you are listening. So always try and have a positive self-talk. For some people, this is easy. For some people, this is very difficult. That internal voice in their head, for some people is always negative, and for some it is always positive. So, but be deliberate, be intentional, and try and have a positive internal voice. Use positive words or phrases that can influence how you feel and how you handle stress. So some of you are close to my age. You probably recognize this Adam Sandler. I guess that just means I'm getting a little bit older. But this movie comes from anger management. And I just thought some of these quotes just went really well with what I'm talking about. This is kind of self-talk, mantras. Some people love mantras and they have this mantra. So just some things here. These are quotes from this movie. The anger sharks are swimming in my head. Good news, I fed my anger monkey a banana this morning. He is angry. It's a sickness, not a crime. And then Goose Fraba, which is just a sort of a made up mantra that they use in this movie. So, but they say it over and over again when somebody is under a lot of stress to help them calm down. So you can come up and just like Goose Fraba, it could be something made up and you can just say it over and over in your head. And that's what you use to calm down when you're in a stressful situation. So I just thought that these kind of went really well with what we're talking about. So how do you respond to your own thoughts? Do you struggle to control your thoughts, feelings, or body sensations? Do you get mad? Do you feel sad? Or do you get busy or eat so you don't notice? Do you blame yourself for thinking or feeling that way? If you answered yes to these questions, these issues can become problems. Does this sound familiar to you? Picture in your mind a time that you experienced stressful or unwanted thoughts, feelings, or body sensations within the last couple of days. Which of these 4 ways did you try and respond? Did you try to control them? Did you try to manage them? Did you try to avoid the feelings? Or did you try and blame it on somebody else? There's a lot of coping mechanisms that people use. Everybody uses some type of coping mechanism, but just try to use one that's healthy rather than one that's unhealthy. So pick 3 words. The body hears what the mind thinks. So choose your thoughts with purpose. Again, this is just about positive thinking. Tell yourself that you can overcome any challenge. Try choosing 3 words to tell yourself to maintain the mindset you want. You might choose words such as calm, capable, or control. Pick 3 words for yourself. These can be any 3 words. Pick 3 positive words and use them like a mantra. Anytime you're in a stressful situation, just take a step back and just repeat these 3 positive words over and over until you think clearly. Again, think back to the cortisol in the bloodstream. It fogs your thoughts, it fogs your actions. What you're doing is giving yourself some time for this cortisol to get out of your bloodstream so you can make a clear and healthy decision. So the power of positive thinking. In a 30,000 person study on how we handle stress, there was a 43% increase in dying from stress, but only for those who reported being under stress and thinking that stress was bad. So we all know that we go through stress, but not all stress is bad. So just having a positive outlook, you're under stress, but thinking about that in some positive way decreases the chance of dying from stress. So strategy number 2, use your breath. When faced with a challenge, first use your breath. Deep breathing calms the mind, can help you focus. It can also help reduce chronic pain and improve your sleep. There's many studies out there that show different breathing exercises can help to reduce stress. Taking deep breaths when your brain is full of cortisol can help you calm down before you say something you might regret later. And again, we're going back to the cortisol in the bloodstream. It's giving your body time to get that cortisol out of your bloodstream so you can make a clear, healthy decision rather than a poor, dangerous one. So there are many breathing exercises that you can do. You can go online and find these. There's things such as box breathing, where you take a breath in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you do this over and over, sort of like a box. There's just taking 3 or 4 deep breaths and counting them. There's many, and you can go online and look these up. But you should try breathing exercises for 3 to 5 minutes is long enough to sort of calm your mind and help you focus. And again, these are things that don't take a lot of time. They don't have any cost. They're things you can do on your own. They're things you can do with somebody else. And they can really help you have a more satisfying life. So strategy number 3 is use acceptance. If you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change the way you think about it. You can choose to change your attitude. You can change how you choose to handle the situation. So this is all about positive thinking. Some people get stressed out about a lot of things that they have no control over. If you can't have any control over it, why should it stress you out? Have you ever heard the expression, I have a lot on my plate? Think about all the things that stress you out. Just imagine them being on a plate and writing them down. And you can try this at home if you want. Just get a paper plate and a marker and write all the things that stress you down on it. And then cross out all the things that you have no control over and see what's left. And the things you do have control over, do something about. And all the things you don't have any control over, don't worry about them. Accept them and move on. So everybody likes a little BS. So BS in this instance is breathe and smile. There's studies again that show just taking a deep breath and smiling, no matter how bad of a mood you're in or sad, just that using those muscles that create the smile relieves stress and causes you to be in a better mindset. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're not going to solve everyone's problems, but we're trying to help you in a quick, cost-effective way be in a better mindset. And again, smiling around somebody else helps them to be in a better mindset as well. So now we've talked a lot about how you can help yourself, some of the things that stress causes, and some tools for your toolbox. So the last part of this is we're going to talk a little bit about how to help somebody else. So what if you see someone else that's really struggling with stress or anxiety or depression? So you have the gut feeling that something is wrong with a person you know. So this is a great resource, and you can Google this, or I can send links to it, but it's North Dakota State University has this out, responding to distressed people, and there's a lot of good things in here. If you take the mental health first aid class, there's QPR sessions, which are about an hour and a half trainings. These are all things that can help you respond to distressed people. And again, we talked about eustress, which is a good stress, and distress, which is a bad stress. And here we're talking about how to help someone who's in distress, who's really in that bad stress and doesn't know how to get out of it on their own. All right, we've got another video. This one's a little shorter than the last one.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
All right, so we saw in that video there just a little bit the differences between empathy and sympathy. And if you're like me, I've seen that video a bunch of times, and I still find myself, when somebody has an issue, saying, well, at least, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to say that. That's the wrong thing to say. So anyway, we all do it. Sometimes it's the easiest thing. A lot of it comes from just not knowing what to say sometimes. And empathy, when you have empathy, you don't have to have any answers. You don't have to know what to say. It's really just putting yourself on the same level as that person and listening. One of the best things you can do is listening. So as you think of the process and your plan going in, consider your own mindset and the sort of mental posture that you bring when you're helping somebody. Most people don't need sympathy. They don't want sympathy. A lot of people just want to talk. You're not going to know all the answers, but hopefully you'll have some resources. Do you feel like you can offer empathy to someone? Can you think of things from their perspective? You might discover quickly that this person is in a critical situation. You may be tempted to become sympathetic with them. However, sympathy usually isn't helpful. They need answers, but they need to play an active role in coming out with those answers. You can't help somebody that doesn't want help. This will ensure the level of commitment required going forward. Can you help them think, discover, and live with possible outcomes and decisions to be made? So in the mental health first aid training, they have this 5-step strategy to somebody who might be considering suicide. So assess for the risk of suicide, listen non-judgmentally, give reassurance and information, encourage appropriate professional help, and encourage self-help and other support strategies. So this is just a real quick 5-step strategy for helping someone. So the goal is open and honest dialogue. So communicating through conflict involves dialogue. That is open, honest communication. It involves a lot of listening, and it takes practice. First, try to preserve the relationship. Opening up for conversation. Tell the facts and impacts on yourself and others without judgment or blame. Explain the outcome you want. I'd really like us to resolve this in a way that works for both of us. Ask for other views. How do you see the situation? What am I missing? Second, create safety, a safe place for them to talk. Keep the dialogue open and honest again. Probe. You can ask for more information. Restate. Is this what you said? Paraphrase. In other words, I'm hearing. Did I get that right? And summarize. From what you're saying, I sense that you're feeling blank. Is this right? And reframe. I'm hearing that you'd like to have this happen, right? It's all right to ask people to repeat what they said, just so you can clarify the situation. And third is develop a shared purpose. Commit to stay in the dialogue by asking, are you willing to? Give them a task. Uncover other interests and reasons behind the position each is taking. Why do you want that? Reframe a mutual purpose with the both and thinking. How can we satisfy both your needs and mine? What do we both care about? Brainstorm both and solutions. Don't forget to apologize when you've made a mistake. Use contrast when needed. That is, when you've been misunderstood. Use don't do language. An example of this, I don't want you to think I don't value you on our team. I do want us to talk more openly about our team problems. So these are all skills that take a lot of practice. So nobody's gonna learn all these skills and everything from this short webinar, but there hopefully will give you just a few tools tonight. And if you want to delve into it more, there's plenty of resources out there. So the active listening continuum. So this is one way to think about things. Again, this is having empathy. This is listening. So the most important skill you can have when somebody's struggling is to listen. Really listen to people. Use your empathy and truly listen to their feelings. Stephen Covey says, most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. But if you're going to help somebody, you need to listen to the intent to understand, not reply. So asking is often when a conversation starts, when someone is invited to say something through voice or another communication mode. Probing or guessing is a way to gently gather more information to help someone understand. Attending means paying attention, noticing the conventional or unconventional signals, linguistic or non-linguistic expressions, and spoken or other communication modes. Restating is simply repeating what one thinks was said. Paraphrasing is using one's own words to restate what the speaker said. Summarizing is paraphrasing and adding the emotion that seemed to be expressed by the speaker. And reframing is to state in neutral or unbiased terms what one thinks the speaker really wants. And again, this is called a continuum. And for those of you who may not be familiar with a continuum, it means you can start over at any point in time. Maybe you ask and probe and attend, and then you need to start over and ask again. Maybe you need to get to restate and you need to start over and ask again. Maybe you get to restate and you need to probe again. This isn't a beginning and an end. This is a continuum where you keep going until you solve the problem. So now some of the most difficult things are if you find somebody that you're working with or a family member and you think that they are thinking about suicide. So what can you do? And this is not easy, and this takes a lot of practice for most people. So you can ask them directly, are you having thoughts of suicide? Asking directly does not increase the risk of suicide and may provide the person with relief that someone sees their struggles. Many people that are struggling, that are really in the depths where they really feel that suicide is the best option, feel that nobody sees that they're going through struggles, nobody sees or understands or cares. So just asking them lets them know that someone cares, someone sees that they're struggling. Even if you can't help them, at least they know somebody has taken the time to see that they're struggling. There was a guy that jumped off the bridge in San Francisco. Most people do not survive that, but this guy survived it. And afterwards, he was doing some interviews. He's a big advocate of mental health first aid now. He said before he went and jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, he sat there on the edge of the bridge for about an hour or two and was just waiting for somebody to stop and ask him what he was doing. And lots of people walked by. He said hi to them. They said hi to him. People were cordial, but nobody stopped and asked him what he was doing. And he, at the end of the day, ended up jumping off the bridge. He survived, unfortunately, but all he was looking for was somebody to recognize that he was struggling. So what if someone says yes? So maybe you're thinking that somebody is considering suicide and you don't know what to do. So that's a reason not to ask somebody. So what if somebody does say yes? So do not leave the person alone. Call for help and or take them to a hospital or healthcare provider. You can ask somebody, if you ask them, are you having thoughts of suicide? And they say yes, you can say, can I take you to the hospital? Or can I take you to your doctor? Sometimes they'll say yes, and sometimes they'll say no. You can't just take them if they say no. That's called kidnapping. So that is not allowed. But if they say yes, then you can take them to the hospital. And I've been in this situation where I had to take somebody to the hospital. I really didn't, this was many years ago. I had no training at all. I didn't know what to do. But I was able to get that person to the hospital where he could get help from someone who did know what to do. And this training tonight is not teaching anybody to be a counselor. It's just giving you the basic information so you can help somebody or recognize that somebody might need help. So some suicide warning signs. So some things, talking or writing about suicide or death, feeling hopeless, trapped, or like a burden to others, giving away prized possessions, making a plan or acquiring means, saying goodbyes to everybody, isolation from others, loss of interest, and changes in moods. A lot of people will have change in moods, and sometimes when somebody makes a decision that they're going to take their life, sometimes their mood is actually much happier than what they were before. They've sort of come to terms with it, with themselves. So don't think that somebody that you've noticed has been in a really depressed mood for a long time and all of a sudden they're not anymore. That might be a sign right there that they're contemplating suicide. So some suicide warning signs and examples of statements. So clear to a friend, I'm going to kill myself. And sometimes they can be that clear, but most of the time they're coded. So coded to a son, don't be surprised if I die in a tractor rollover. So a lot of accidents, and agricultural and forestry accidents are thought to actually be suicides. They may or may not be able to be proven that way, but a lot of them are sort of staged as accidents. Clear to a banker, if you foreclose, you'll be seeing my obituary. Coded to a friend, if I should pass away, I want you to have my old Winchester 12 gauge. Coded to a financial advisor, what happens to my debt if I die? And again, I had a person that started asking me several years ago way too many questions about their life insurance and how it could be used and how it was going to be taxed. And so there was some pretty clear signs there that they were in some a really depressed state. So if you have somebody that's asking a lot of questions about life insurance, debt, some of that kind of stuff, there may be time to just ask some questions and listen. So some more suicide warning signs and examples of statements. And I'm not going to read all these here, but is this enough medicine to kill someone? I don't care about life. I'm going to be leaving. So there's a lot of different things. Most of the time there were warning signs. Some of them were subtle, but most of the time, most of the people that complete suicide, when their family and friends think back, there were warning signs, and they just weren't, either they were ignored or they weren't recognized. So there were warning signs. So some resources, the suicide prevention resources. So the suicide prevention lifeline, they have a website. They have this 1-800 number. It's 1-800-273-TALK. And this is for somebody that might be thinking about suicide, but it's also if you think somebody, a family member or a friend or a coworker is thinking about suicide, you don't know what to do, you can call this prevention lifeline, and somebody can talk you through what to do. So this is a resource for anybody that wants to help somebody thinking about suicide, as well as for somebody themselves. The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention website is there, afsp.org. These are really good resources. So we've talked a lot about stress. So there's a relationship between chronic stress and suicide, as you've seen in some of the videos. So chronic stress can be very difficult to deal with. It can build up over time and have a profound impact on people physically and mentally. When dealing with chronic stress, it may be very difficult for people to see solutions to the problems they are facing, and they may feel trapped, helpless, or hopeless. We've talked about communication, listening, social support, and coping skills. It's important that you are aware of the suicide warning signs and prepared if you were ever in that situation. We've discussed some stressors, including economic ones and communicating with people. Now, we will talk about the relationship between chronic stress and suicide. This can be an awkward conversation, one that most of us do not like. So we've already talked about some of the things, how you can ask somebody about suicide. So some more things, so more do's. So if you're working with people, and this may be more for people working directly with foresters, some do's: follow up if you said you would, follow up even if you did not say you would, and don't promise anything that you can't follow through on. So don't tell somebody you're going to do something and then not do it. If you can't do something, just be honest about it. Be like, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll try and find somebody that can, and reach out and find somebody that can. It's critical that you follow up when you say you would. Sometimes a simple phone call or stopping in to say hi goes a long way. So I don't know if there's any federal employees on here. so most of the rest of my slides are resources. The USDA has an employee assistance program, federal occupational health. They got a website and a phone number. So this is for any federal employees. So if you are a federal employee, this is for you. 911 is always a resource. So if you find somebody that's considering suicide, or maybe you're yourself having some thoughts, you don't know what to do, you can always call 911. Some of these are some local numbers here in Virginia. So you would need to find some of the local numbers for you. The state police is always a resource. Here in Virginia, we have community services boards, and some crisis intervention services. So Virginia 211 is a free referral hotline. Of course, there's always a suicide prevention hotline, which is a good one, and that's a nationwide number. NAMI is a National Alliance on Mental Illness. It's a national organization, advocacy group. These are some more national hotlines, especially for rural people. So the Iowa Concern line is a 24-hour hotline. It's not just for Iowa people. It was started in Iowa. It's based in Iowa, but anybody can call there. Mental Health First Aid has some resources. Again, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Crisis text line, you can text 741-741 is the text line if you just want to text someone. And I know they keep a lot of statistics, and they've had a large increase in texts from teenagers in the last year. Some of it pandemic related, some of it not. The Center for Rural Affairs. So we talked a lot about stress, how it affects you, how you can help somebody, some tools for your toolbox. So where will you go from here? So come up with an action plan for yourself. Find the tools that work for you. We go to stress or we go to relaxation. So, and again, just the power of positive thinking. So there's been many studies that just thinking positively decreases your stress, decreases the cortisol in your blood, and makes you think more clearly. We've done workshops where we've just had people just come up with a positive word and repeat it 3 or 4 times, and come up with a negative word and repeat it 3 or 4 times. And the difference in how people feel is really tremendous in just a few minutes, just by thinking positively. And I know for some people this is easy, and for some people it's not easy at all. And I'm one of those people that it's not that easy for. So I completely understand if it's not hard. Be intentional about what you're going to do, and that's really the end of my presentation. I do, if there's some questions, I'll flip through a couple of slides here just of resources, just so you have them in the presentation. And it's a lot of words on here. But reach out to your local extension office, sheriff's office, crisis prevention. A lot of counties have this, some state hotlines. Mental Health First Aid. Michigan State University has a lot of really good resources. Iowa State also does. Check with your state, but most of these resources are open for anybody. And these are just some references. So I will go back to this, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I really thought that was an excellent presentation, and I think that it's quite possible that you've really helped a lot of people with this. I know I've struggled myself with negative self-talk and things like that. So it is very much appreciated. We are open for questions. You can do that either using the question and answer or the chat function, or you can raise your hand if you'd like to speak out loud. And the Q&A is actually anonymous. So if you prefer to put your questions there, you can, or you can put them in the chat, either just to the panelists, which is myself, Agnes, and Jeremy, or to everyone if you think others would like to see the question as well. And also in that chat, Agnes has very helpfully put the websites for some mental health service agencies and associations in each of our 5 states. So you can look there, as well as, again, as we said, that this presentation will be available recorded, and that will be through West Virginia Cooperative Extension. We will have that available. If you're already in West Virginia, you should have access to that. If you're not in West Virginia, we have that almost ready, this far from being available to everybody for credit anyway. You can still see it right now, but we have it very close to being ready. And so please, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put those in there. We did have a few comments, a few people talking about what has helped them. Somebody mentioned prayer, somebody else about breathing, and somebody else about walking and being in the outdoors, which most of us in our field get to be out in the outdoors a lot, but being maybe perhaps more intentional about not seeing the outdoors only as a workplace, but remembering the reasons why we want to work outdoors and enjoy the outdoors. Let's see, we had a question about mindfulness, and just kind of maybe a little bit more about what mindfulness is and how that works. I guess it's a phrase we hear a lot these days.
Yeah, and mindfulness means means different things to different people. Sometimes prayer is a form of mindfulness, obviously, that a lot of people are familiar with. Being intentional about your thoughts, thinking positive thoughts, all this is all part of mindfulness. And I am not an expert in it. There are people that are experts in it. You're right, there's a lot of people talking about it, but there's just a ton of studies that's showing just thinking positively, being intentional about these positive thoughts does a lot for all of our mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And that's something, again, that you might find more about in some of those resources, either that Jeremy put up or that Agnes has put in the chat. So I'm just going to give folks a few more minutes if anybody wants to put in a question, either into the chat or the Q&A, or you can raise your hand, and we will have the opportunity to have Jeremy speak on any of those things that you might have questions about. Always takes a little time if you're typing something in, so I'm just kind of talking to fill the time and give you a chance to do that if that's something that you want to do. So I think most of us have struggled from time to time with some mental health issues, and it's just really good to have this opportunity to learn a little bit more about it. And also I've enjoyed the part about what we can do to help others. That's always especially helpful. I might try to look up one of those mental health first aid classes. Maybe they have something like that even here on campus that I could take. It'd be good. Anybody else? Okay, well, not seeing any other questions or comments. I guess just want to thank all of you for being here and devoting your time for this. Again, give it perhaps a couple of weeks before you expect your credits to show up, but you should get a copy of your certificate in your email, the one that you use to register for the class, if you have more than one, very soon. But you do not need to send that certificate unless there's some error. You don't need to send that to us. We will be getting rosters for the people that attended today. We appreciate you being here. We look forward to perhaps seeing you next week, and just really want to thank Jeremy. And we're getting some thanks coming up in the chat now as well. Just thanking Jeremy for his time and his dedication to this important topic, and to speaking to all of us. Really appreciate that, Jeremy.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And again, feel free to reach out, to myself or anybody in Extension if you have any questions or need more resources. There's lots of resources out there. They're not always the easiest to find.
True. Yes, thank you.